Hello! In this video, I'll show you how to make super simple sleeves that don't need to be attached. So I'll be making these to go with my fairy top, but these could go with literally any sleeveless top, dress, playsuit, jumpsuit, you name it. So easy to pair these with a bunch of different outfits. I will, of course, be including the patterns and the measurements that I use. If you want to see how I go making these sleeves, then stick around. Okay, so this is what the 3 pattern pieces of each sleeve looks like. They're just 3 rectangles in different sizes. You'll also need 2 pieces of elastic, one for the top band and one for the wristband. So basically 5 pieces overall for each sleeve. Now let's get to calculating your width. Start with number 1, calculate your arm width, then calculate number 2, your width. Just to call out, your width is the same for all 3 of your fabric pieces. Now for number 3, mark up your top band elastic. For number 4, cut your top band elastic. Moving on to number 5, mark up your wristband elastic. And then number 6, cut your wristband elastic. Moving on, let's calculate your height. So start with number 1 and calculate your top band height. Next, calculate number 2, your body of sleeve height. And finally, calculate number 3, your wristband height. If you're using the same sized elastic band for your top band and your wristband, then your wristband height will be exactly the same as your top band height. And just in case your arm is a similar size to mine, here are my exact measurements. So this is based on the width of the top of my arm being about 30 centimeters and my total arm height being about 38 centimeters. Now that I have got my pattern pieces drawn out and all my measurements, I'm going to get my pieces of fabric cut out. I'm also just labeling my pieces as I draw them out. Okay, and those are the fabric pattern pieces for my sleeves all cut out. Time to put them together. Before I get started on putting my sleeves together, I'm just cutting and labeling my pieces of elastic. To start with, I'm taking my top band piece, folding the 2 ends together, right side to right side, and I will pin and stitch up my 1 centimeter seam allowance. Whilst I've got my top band folded over, I am just marking up where my halfway points are, so just keeping to inside my seam allowance. Next, I'm taking my matching elastic and folding it over and then overlapping it by that 1 centimeter seam allowance. And I'm just stitching that little rectangle up. I'm quickly marking out my halfway points on my elastic as well. Now I'm pressing the seam on my top band flat and then folding it in half, wrong side to wrong side, and pressing. Next, I'm marking out where my 1 centimeter seam allowance is. I'm also marking up a centimeter down. So the width of my elastic is 2 centimeters and I just want a stitching line, which is halfway through to go through the layers of elastic and fabric. That will help stop the elastic from twisting around on the top section of my arm. After that, I'm finding the hem of my top band and the hem of my elastic and slipping my elastic inside. And I am just pinning that spot to hold that in place. I'm also just finding my halfway marks and I will pin at that point as well. Time to sew this elastic into this piece of fabric. So I'm going to stitch up along my 1 centimeter seam allowance line, making sure I don't go through the elastic. So that should just be a couple of mil above where I'm stitching now. So I'll put this into the sewing machine, hold at my 2 halfway points, and then stretch out and stitch along that centimeter seam allowance.
Okay, and now I'm repeating the exact same process for that line of stitching through the fabric and the elastic. Okay, and that is my top band with the elastic sewn into it. Time to attach it to the body of the sleeve. For the body of my sleeve, I'm stitching the edges together, right side to right side with my 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm quickly marking up my halfway points again, just in my seam allowance on the top edge of the body of the sleeve and the bottom. And just pressing that seam flat. So to join my top band to the body of my sleeve, I'm finding my seam. There it is, finding it on the body of my sleeve. So I've got this turned wrong side up. Then I'm slipping my band so it's upside down facing me. Then inside like so, and then I will pin just here on my seam. And I'm just pinning along where I've already sewn, so that 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now I'm finding my halfway marks, so finding it on my band, so it's just here, and then on the body of my sleeve as well, and again pinning on that 1 centimeter seam allowance line. Now I'm just doing the exact same thing I did earlier. So I'm placing this in my sewing machine, stretching it out at the points I have my pins, and then it's sewing along that 1 centimeter seam allowance, making sure I don't sew into the elastic, and I'm just going directly on top of where I've already sewn. Just making sure all my layers of fabric are lined up below. I don't want to miss any. Okay, and that is my top band and the body of my sleeve sewn together. And now it's time for the final section of my sleeve, the wristband. So I'm going to do my wristband slightly differently than I did my top band, where I've sewn through the layers of fabric and elastic. I won't be able to do the same with the wristband because the elastic doesn't stretch to the full length of the fabric. So yeah, it will be slightly different, but I'm not really too worried if the elastic flips around in this one because some of the puff should actually cover the wristband anyway, and I can always just adjust it with my hand. Firstly, I'm putting my 2 ends together, right side to right side, and stitching up along my 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now I'm pressing open that seam, and then folding my piece in half, wrong side to wrong side, and then pressing. Now I'm marking up my halfway points, but I'm also going to mark up quarters for this one. I'll do that on my elastic as well, and on that bottom edge of the body of my sleeve. Now I'll stitch up my elastic, so I'm overlapping my 2 ends by 1 centimeter, and then I'll just stitch a little rectangle here. Now I'm just marking where my centimeter seam allowance is. That will be my row of stitching. After that, I'm slipping my sewn up elastic inside, and I'm only pinning it where the 2 seams are. I'm also just making sure that where I pin is not through the elastic because I don't want to be sewing through the elastic. Just doing 1 to hold it there, and then the others won't be through the elastic as I said, and that will inform my line of stitching. This one's a little trickier because my elastic is so small. So I'm just going to pin up where the fabric is a match. I'm just starting with half of the diameter. So I'm just gonna take little bits of elastic, pull, move it around, little bits of elastic, pull, and continue that way. Again, making sure I sew along the seam allowance and don't sew through the elastic. I've just stitched up half very slowly, and now I'm compressing all of what's already stitched up so that I have space to sew the rest. So just compress that as much as I can, and then add some more pins and slowly just stitch each section. So that is my wristband elastic sewn into my wristband fabric. Now I'm going to go around and attach it to the body of my sleeve. So firstly, I want to find my seam, and I will then pin up at the seam and pin up along my 4 quarter marks. So I'm just turning my sleeve inside out. And I'm just pinning up along the line I just sewed, so my 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I have my 4 quarters pinned up. Now I'm just going back to the sewing machine. I'll hold each quarter and then stitch along that seam allowance. Alright, and despite that being very fiddly, that is the wristband all attached. That means that my sleeves are officially finished. Let me show you how they look. And those are my sleeves, all done. They're gonna work really well with my fairy outfit, and I think they'll work pretty well with literally any other outfit I want to put them with. I hope you love them, and as per usual, I will see you in the next video.